Steve Phillips, former Mets GM. I was listening to Steve earlier this morning on Mad Dog Radio, and he was bringing up some interesting things about Shohei Otani. And he hosts the leadoff spot every morning from 7 to 10 on Sirius XM's MLB Network radio channel. Steve, good to see you again. Give us
You too, Dan.
Give us sort of the sense of why Toronto is kind of emerging as I don't know if a favorite, but certainly a dark horse here for Shohei Otani.
Yeah, I think it's really down to the Dodgers and the Blue Jays right now. And, I think that the thing about the Blue Jays, you think about when Otani came over, he didn't choose the brand. He didn't go Yankees pinstripes. He didn't go Dodger blue. He went to Anaheim. Like it surprised all of us a little bit. But I think that within that, there's a statement that he isn't about everybody else's brand. And what he's done since then is he's built his own brand to such an extreme level of an international star. And it's funny because I think about how many times we said, boy, if Mike Trout played on the East Coast, he'd be such a bigger star. Well, Otani didn't play on the East Coast, and he's the biggest star we have in baseball. I think it really is about the player. And so you think about Otani making this decision, and I look at the idea of if he goes to the Dodgers, he's sharing the brand platform, right? There's some part of him that there's only so much room for brand power, and he's going to share it with the Dodger name. If he goes to Toronto, he owns it, and he owns Canada, he owns the United States, and he owns Japan, and he becomes an international star. Now, he wants to win. Toronto will give them that opportunity. From everything I've sourced out there, they could afford Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Otani moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a really good pitching staff right now. Their window to win here is in the short term. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is, every team that gets him thinks, well, we're going to market him in a way that we're going to pay for his salary. Now, I've never seen those numbers really work, but you can market him with broadcasting rights and sponsorship ads. And, you'll put patches on the shirt now that could be worth millions of dollars. But the other part of it for them is Rogers Corporation owns the team in Toronto, Sportsnet, the TV network. They're a communications company with cell phones and all of that. They want to expand in Asia. And they're the one team in the hunt for Otani where their core business of the ownership will benefit financially with revenue and income if they sign Otani. So it's not just the baseball revenues, it's the core business. And that is where I think they could become the team that could easily spend the most money to try to lure him to come to their club.
How much does the ballpark matter for Otani?
Well, geography doesn't matter. I think, we've heard the ballpark could. Now, the reality is that's a good thing for Toronto. He likes contained environments. His numbers where he's performed the best are in domes and in the better weather. And so he crushed the Blue Jays this year when he went to the Rogers Center, put up big numbers there, homered in multiple games. And so honestly, that actually benefits a bit, but LA certainly will. The argument for the Dodgers, his medical team's out there that worked on his elbow. He's comfortable there. He knows the community. He wouldn't have to move. He's buying a house out there, but it's going to make enough money. He can buy houses in every major league city if he wants to. So, but I do think that it's down to the Blue Jays. And I would not have thought that it's a different move, but this is an ownership driven decision by Toronto.
In retrospect, should the Angels have tried harder to trade Otani?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, it was baseball malpractice that they didn't. I mean, it made no sense. They decided to keep him. And then they said, okay, and while we're doing it, let's go out there in a doubleheader and run him into the ground. So he pitches the one hitter, and then he plays in the second game, hits 2 homers, leaves with cramps. And it was at that point that his body was rejecting, like an organ, rejecting being a two-way player, cramped up from that point forward, elbow breaks down. And so, yeah, they should have moved him. It would have been the right thing. Instead, they kept him, traded away a bunch of prospects that even if they signed him, those are players they would have to have play with him to be able to afford the contract he's going to get. And so it was an owner doing a money grab, and it's an owner who's not going to be in it for the long haul. He had it on the market to sell, and then he pulled it off. And so don't be surprised if you see Artie Moreno put the team up for sale here within the next 2 years.
What's the downside to signing Otani?
So here's the thing. I wouldn't sign him. I look, he's great, but I think the risk is so significant in him being a two-way player. as I said, I think his body started rejecting the notion of being a two-way player. And think about this. He just had his second elbow procedure. I don't know if it was Tommy John or not, but he's the most protected starting pitcher in baseball. Pitches once a week, once every 6 days, and his elbow still broke down. And so what that tells us, and for the second time, so what it tells us is that even being that as protected as he was, he broke down. So how much more can I protect him? And how do you manage a pitching staff while you've got to keep everybody else on 6 days or 7 days too? And I said to Toronto's general manager, Ross Atkins, I said, have you checked with your pitchers how they're going to like it a year from now if they all have to go to a 6-man rotation? Because don't you think that matters? And he goes, yeah, well, it certainly does matter. We'll have to manage it. And there's nuances around it and everything else. I think they want the player and they're going to try to figure it out later.
Great stuff. Thank you for your insights. And good to have you back on.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too, Dan.
That's Steve Phillips, former Mets GM. You can hear him on the leadoff spot every morning, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM MLB Network radio show.